And welcome to the political panel. For many New Brunswickers, the letters NBSO stand for New Brunswick System Operator, the independent agency which maintains the province's energy grid. But for some New Brunswickers, the letters NBSO stand for an agency out of touch and insensitive to the economic reality here in New Brunswick. Something which became apparent after the Energy and Utilities Board cut the amount of money the NBSO was asking for salary increases. Now, prior to that, the NBSO had refused to reveal what those salary increases were. And then subsequently, those increases were revealed to be between 13 and 50%. Now, the EUB has also been chastised for not properly answering, or the NBSO has been chastised for not properly answering questions at hearings. And there was also criticism aimed at the NBSO for canceling a hearing regarding transmission rate changes which were deemed critical. Joining me now to discuss the NBSO, New Brunswick's Energy Minister Craig Leonard and the Liberal Party's energy critic Brian Kenny. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Mr. Leonard, I want to start with you. What are your impressions of how the NBSO is handling itself?
Well, certainly it leaves a little bit to be desired on its PR skills over the last little while. There's no question that they've gotten a bit of a black mark against their name. I'm not sure if it's completely justifiable. I think it's when you go through any kind of EUB hearing, it's a very complex process, and certainly while it wasn't nearly as open and transparent as we would have liked to see the process, I think the end result basically justifies the EUB's role in regulating our energy markets, that they were able to come to what we feel is a proper decision, and that the salary increases that the NBSO was requesting were denied. That they basically felt that in today's current economic situation and the justification that NBSO gave certainly didn't add up, and that they're going to maintain at the 2010-2011 salary levels.
Was it your view that those salary increases were out of line?
Absolutely. Certainly, when you look at what we as a government have been trying to do across the board, which is keep wages in all levels of government under control, certainly continuing with wage freezes in some areas where individuals haven't participated in that program so far, and putting the message out to all levels of government that we need a cultural shift here. That basically we have to realize that we are in tough economic times, that the province does have fiscal challenges, and that everybody's going to have to play a role in that, coming to a solution. And the NBSO is certainly, they're an independent organization, but they were created by government, and certainly we feel that they have to fall in line with what government policy is on salaries and wages.
I'm going to come back to that point about being an independent agency in a minute, but first I want to find out, what's the Liberal Party's perception of the NBSO and how it's been operating?
Well, I tend to agree with Craig on this, is that, at this point in time right now where NBSO has had some issues with their strategy on this, and where the EUB has come in and made a ruling that, the salary increases were not justified. Same here. We believe that at this point in time right now, as the NBSO is a very important instrument to be able to make sure our power grid is up and running. But right now, at this point in time, we feel that the salary increases were not justified, and I think that the EUB has made a ruling on this, and we hope they'll move forward with their ruling.
Would there be an advantage to having the NBSO answerable to the government of the day?
Well, certainly you have to look at it from a variety of different perspectives. Certainly the NBSO, the reason why it was set up as an independent organization is because of what their mandate actually is, which is to obviously manage the reliability and of the transmission system and the direction of the transmission system. But also their role was to facilitate an open market for electricity. Now it can certainly be argued that they've fallen somewhat short on that particular end of their mandate.
What do you mean?
Well, when the NBSO was formed, it was done in a manner to facilitate an open transmission system where there would be buyers and sellers more than just NB Power. Now, certainly there is some market activity in our grid. I think there's up to I think it's around 15 different market participants that are involved, but it is on a much smaller scale than was anticipated. So the NBSO certainly has to maintain that independence in terms of the market, because obviously market participants aren't going to be interested in basically coming to NB Power as a competitor of theirs to gain access to the transmission system. So it's a difficult one on that perspective to say that yes, the NBSO should just be under government watch or NB Power watch, but at the same time there has to be some, if not certainly much more than we have right now, guidance in terms of the administration function of the NBSO, that they can't be out there just doing their own thing and government have no real pull to bring them back in when they seem to get offside.
So who provides that guidance?
Well, that's the thing, is that it's an independent organization right now. So, I mean, as Minister of Energy, my role is to appoint board members, but it's up to the board to hire management, and it's up to management, obviously, to run the day-to-day functions of the organization. So that's one of the things that certainly through the Energy Commission that's one of the areas that we really want to see a good, solid analysis of, is where does the NBSO's independence function actually lie? Is it only on the market side, or is it on the market administration? And make sure that we've got that covered properly to ensure that ratepayers and taxpayers in New Brunswick are getting good value for their money.
Well, very nicely done. It's almost as if we were working from the same script here, because that's where I want to go next. Because some New Brunswickers may be asking themselves, why do we even need an NBSO? Why are we paying these salaries, even though the salary increase has been pared back? Why are we paying these people all of this money to do this job?
Well, my point is that the job is a very complex job. It takes very specialized people to be able to work at the NBSO. But at this point in time, the argument here right now is about the salaries. I also believe, too, with the EUB, because we've always advocated for having a bit more teeth with the EUB to be able to look at the bottom line. What we think the EUB's job is to be able to make sure that they have the best rates for New Brunswickers. And that's what New Brunswickers don't want to see, is these salary increases. We want to be able to have some control on that, and that's where the EUB can come in. And they've made a ruling on this here, and I think it's the right thing to do.
But there was also that incident I referred to in the intro where the NBSO wanted a rate hearing for an increase that it said was critical to have, and then didn't go through with it and just left everybody hanging and said, well, we don't have to give you an explanation. There seems to be an impression being created now in the province that the NBSO is answerable to no one and does what it wants. Is that a fair impression?
I certainly wouldn't say it's a fair impression. Certainly, the public made their voice very clear on the salary matter.
Did you hear from people?
Oh, absolutely.
What did they say?
Question. Well, they certainly didn't feel that it was correct for any government entity to be looking at salary increases in that way, and unfortunately, that's where the problem that we as a government were seeing, is that we didn't really have any direct ability, except talking with the board of directors and just indicating that here's government policy. We certainly would like to see a directional move in that and towards that. But the fact is that you don't want to get involved with the day-to-day operations because of that independence function. It's a balance that you gotta reach at some point.
So what does Craig Leonard want to see happen to the NBSO?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to make sure that again, it comes back to that value for ratepayer and taxpayers' dollars. We have to look to see, okay, is is the NBSO, as it currently stands, fulfilling its mandate? And I don't think that there's any question that they do a very good job in terms of the functioning and the reliability of the system. Where there is an issue is in this market development side, that hasn't happened to the extent that we had hoped, or that it was expected when the NBSO was formed. That being said, again, there's a lot of people who say, we should just fold it back into NB Power, or we should.
What do you think of that?
Well, it's a valid argument. There's no question if the market stays where it is. The issue that we've got is we have to look at where do we want to go in the future. Certainly, regional collaboration is a very key role that we want to see explored and definitely move down that road. And one of the key functions of that would be a regional grid. And in that scenario, an entity like the NBSO would be the ideal candidate to manage and run that kind of operation. So it's a multifaceted issue that you have to look at where you want to go, not just where we are today. And so I think with any of these kind of situations that, we're going to hear what the Energy Commission has to say about it. Then we're going to take a look to see what role NB Power is going to play. And obviously NBSO will be a huge part of that decision as well.
In terms of the shortcomings regarding market development, Mr. Kenny, I'll come to you in one sec, but I just want to clarify this point with Mr. Leonard. In terms of the shortcomings about market development, is that a shortcoming that is the fault of the NBSO, or is that shortcoming a result of market conditions that are out of the control of the NBSO?
I think there's also there's those two components. I think there's also a situation where when the NBSO was originally set up, it was basically the guidelines that potential players in the market had to follow might not have been very conducive to attracting new players to the market. So I wouldn't put all the blame on NBSO, but again, they are part of the issue that we have to look at in terms of, do we want to continue down this road of trying to develop this open market, or do we want to look more in the regional collaboration point of view, or do we want to just kind of say, okay, NB Power and NBSO is going to focus on New Brunswick and look at it from that perspective. The overarching issue that we have to deal with as well is also U.S. regulations with FERC, basically.
FERC, what is FERC?
Federal Energy Regulation Committee, I believe is the acronym for it.
Okay.
But basically, they have guidelines set out in the U.S. for utilities in terms of using transmission grids and whatnot, and reciprocity is certainly a key factor in that, in terms of that if you want to sell into the U.S., you have to allow the U.S. to sell into your markets. And all of our neighboring provinces basically have an open access system. We have it with the NBSO. That's what they manage, is the open access transmission tariff. And as a result of that, to go back to the way it was basically in New Brunswick, where it was NB Power managing the transmission system, we would be the odd man out in our regional situation now. So again, that's one more factor you have to look at. What it was 10 years ago, while we've changed, other jurisdictions have as well, and you have to take a look at where these other jurisdictions have gone.
Mr. Kenny, do you have any issues at all with this assessment of the NBSO in terms of value for money spent on the behalf of taxpayers?
New Brunswickers have seen where these substantial wage increases were there, and UB come in and said, we have to roll these back or put a freeze on them. And I think that's what New Brunswickers' appetite is for. That is to have that control on there. Looking back at like Mr. Leonard was saying, a number of years ago, NBSO was basically NB Power employees. Things are changing right now in the utilities market, and to be able to have that open access, the independence still has to be there with the NBSO. I believe that they are doing a pretty good job, even though maybe more than 90% of it is with New Brunswick alone, but there are other players that are involved with the system operator. But I think right now there is a precedent set where New Brunswickers spoke out The EUB has made a decision, and I think moving forward, people realize that we have to get control on these costs, and nobody has an appetite for it.
You know, there is a perception in New Brunswick, and this isn't coming as news to either of you, I suppose. There is a perception that NB Power and the companies associated with NB Power are fat cats. The employees make way more than most people in New Brunswick make, the vast majority of people in the province make, and that it's a place that is fat and top-heavy. And I want to get your impressions on that perception that New Brunswickers have.
Yeah. Certainly, perception is reality in most cases, and I think in the case of MB Power, there certainly that perception has certainly been justified in a few situations. I think the overall structure of the utility is solid. I think that the people who are there are excellent workers who are getting fair compensation. There's no question that there's been examples of compensation structures that have just gotten way out of line. And certainly one of the priorities that I've had since coming into this position is to take a look at NB Power and reevaluate basically every position that we've got in the utility. We want to make sure, again, it comes back to value for money.
Any changes on the way?
Absolutely. Certainly the utility, there was a reduction of about 120 individuals last year. We want to continue to take a look at every single position that we've got in the utility to make sure that it can be justified on a bottom line. And certainly we've made some changes at the management level as well to make sure that the culture that's there it gets shaken up. The fact of the matter is that we want NB Power operating like a business, and we want every decision that's made when it comes to spending dollars, which when it comes right down to it are ratepayer and taxpayer dollars, that the decisions are made based on what's a reasonable expectation of value for those expenditures. So there's no question that it's going to take a lot of time. It's a company that certainly has been we'll say lacking direction over the last few years, but certainly that's by no fault of the utility itself. I mean, there's been government intervention at various points that certainly have not made business sense, and what we're trying to do is let the people who work there and let the people in New Brunswick know that NB Power is going to be held to the exact same standard that every good solid business in New Brunswick is, that expenditures have to make sense, and that at the end of the day we expect profitability and delivery of service in a way that customers expect.
Is it as lean as you want it to be?
No. I think there's plenty of more room to make changes. Again, I think that the overall structure of NB Power has to be looked at, and certainly the fact of the matter is that the positions that we have there, they're justifiable, but we have to look at what those positions, what they're paid, and certainly how many of those positions we have. There are core functions that need to take place. There's probably all kinds of examples where we can downsize to a point that makes sense.
Definitely, there's very many good and loyal employees with NB Power, and have worked long years at NB Power. I do believe also that there are room for changes, and I think over the last couple of years with everything that's going on with utilities and with NB Power, that I think there's seems to be at the local level people do want to make change for the better for NB Power, but we also have to have some of that. Government interference, and a good example is where we have rate freezes. We see what's happening with our commodities, with oil and so on, and my concern right now is for the profitability of NB Power, making sure we can have the best rates for New Brunswickers, but there seems to be still government interference in there. So I think that NB Power moving forward, because there's been so much talk about utilities with NB Power, I think that the grassroots workers at NB Power are trying to make a lot of changes, and I think moving forward we will see some positive change. When
you refer to government interference, what are you referring to specifically?
Well, again, where we've been asking questions about with the cost and the debt of NB Power, and they came in, the government, the Alberta government came in and have freezed rates for 3 years. And right now, I just can't see how we're doing that. That's one of my questions as the energy critic. Even though I want low rates for New Brunswickers,
right.
If we're going to be profitable, putting rate freezes in here with everything else going up around us, I don't know how they can do it.
So if the minister was going to take steps to ensure that NB Power was as lean as he would like it to be, you wouldn't oppose that?
I think what we have to do is we have to go in and work with the people at NB Power to find the efficiencies within the company to be able to generate power in New Brunswick and to be able to have the lowest rates for ratepayers.
Wow. You've got an easy job of it looks like. But you know what you're saying, though, is going to create.
He'll come up with something to criticize.
It's going to create some concern down on King Street, though.
Well, I don't think that there will be much concern. The fact of the matter is that the one thing that I've found as Minister of Energy, and certainly spending a lot of time at NB Power and talking to people, is that the employees there, they're fully on board with changes in the utility.
Even though if it means job loss?
Well, I think everybody who works at a company wants their company to be successful, and I think that as you've mentioned, the perception that NB Power that there might be some overstaffing in certain areas. Look, we can't avoid the reality.
Overstaffing. That's an interesting description.
But no, I think that is the fact of the matter is that there are efficiencies that we can make in a lot of different areas at the utility, and that's the thing is with that there are no easy decisions in any of these type of situations. Do
you have a timetable?
Oh, absolutely. We're working on it right now. It's an ongoing process that we've incorporated with the board of directors. The management are completely on board, and again, the employees of NB Power are on board as well. They want to see their utility basically working in a way that's best for New Brunswickers.
So when will it be as lean as you want it to be? By what date?
Oh, look, that's an ongoing process with any business. You can't put a date on something like that. You just have to continue to work for continual improvement.
Are unions okay with what you're trying to do?
Unions are in the same boat. They realize that to move forward, we've got to make improvements. You can't stand still, and you can't just work off of the existing structures that are there. Certainly, in my discussions with the unions that we have at NB Power, certainly, they all are fully aware that for the utility to get where it needs to get, which is pay down debt and operate in a sustainable manner, that there's improvements and changes that need to take place.
It'd be also nice to see the recommendations of the Energy Commission and where we're going. We have some recommendations there, but we don't really know where it's going right now, and it's overdue. And to be able to move forward, we need to have a concrete example of how we're going to change the energy production in New Brunswick. Still planning to rebuild the Mactaquac Dam?
That's part of the IRP for the Integrated Resource Plan for NB Power. Certainly, Mactaquac is definitely a key generator for us. I believe it's the engineering work is looking at the latter part of this decade, and we'll take it from there. It's you always have to look at the planning in the long term, but certainly with the way that the markets go these days, that anything outside of a few years is you can never be sure about anything.
That could be happening right around your second term, the end of your second term.
Well,
interesting time.
Hopefully so.
Or Brian Kenny says on an optimistic note, our next turn. I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.